Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ida and here are the books that I read in the month of March. So I'm gonna do it a little differently this time. Normally I run through them in the order that I read them, but this time I'm gonna go by the rating that I gave the book. So I'm gonna start off with the lowest rated and then end off on a high with the highest rated books. The very first one I don't count at all because I only read 1/3 of the book. It was unfortunately a DNF, and that was The Everlasting by Alix E. Harrow. I've read Starling House by this author before, which I really loved, but unfortunately this one didn't hit the spot for me, and it was a little too overwritten, and I just wasn't vibing with the story. I wasn't really intrigued by the premise of it, and I have to admit that the reason why I picked it up was because I loved her first book so much, and this one just didn't really do it for me. I didn't really care about the characters or the storyline, and I didn't really enjoy the way it was written either. So unfortunately, I had to DNF that one. Then I don't have any 1-star reads, and that's mostly just a me thing. I very rarely rate a book 1 star, because if it is a 1 star, I'm most likely gonna DNF it instead. But I do have some 2-star reads because I feel like if you're an author and you wrote a book, that's already really impressive. So for that, you at least deserve 1 star, and then I guess 1 more because I finished the book. So I didn't completely hate the book, I guess. I do have 1 book that I gave 2 stars, and I think this is gonna be very surprising, especially because I've seen a lot of people read this book in actually this month, and everyone seems to love it, but unfortunately I didn't. And that is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. This is my 3rd Rebecca Ross book, and with the exception of A River Enchanted, I have not really enjoyed the others. I didn't really enjoy Divine Rivals either, but I was kind of hoping, since Wild Reverence was a book that took place before Divine Rivals, that it would kind of give me the background information that I felt like I was missing from the Divine Rivals series. But unfortunately, I didn't really enjoy it. I think there's no doubt that Rebecca Ross writes in a really beautiful way. So in this book we follow Matilda, who is a goddess, and she doesn't really know what kind of powers she has yet. Anyways, we follow her story and how she connects with this human boy, first in his dreams when they're both kids, and then later on when she actually meets him, and she ends up helping him defend his castle against his uncle. And then in general, just like their love story and how they meet in his world. And even though she's gonna live forever and he's a human being, it's like their love story across all borders. I did enjoy the very first part of the book, like maybe the first 140 pages. I found really intriguing, but then by the halfway mark, I was really, really bored. And throughout the rest of it, I was also super bored. I felt like it was a little too drawn out. It was a lot of fighting around this castle, and it was just a lot of repetitions. And yeah, again, I don't think you can doubt that Rebecca Ross, she writes in a really beautiful and lyrical way, but I just felt like there were too many repetitions and I wasn't really connecting to the characters. So I'm afraid this is going to be my last Rebecca Ross book. I do have to read the second book in A River Enchanted, but besides that, I don't think her stories are for me, unfortunately. Then I have 1 book that I gave 2.5 stars, and that was Mile High by Tomforde. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. I have to admit, the reason why I picked this one up was because I heard really great things about some of the later books in this series. I don't remember what book it is. It might be book 3 or 4 that people tend to really like. So I was just thinking maybe I have to pick up the first book in order to read the others. And now I'm really scared, and I don't know if I'm gonna continue on because I didn't really enjoy this one. Our female main character, she's a flight attendant, and she gets hired to go on a private jet for this guy's hockey team. And in the beginning, he's just really annoying. He really wants to get in contact with her because he's really attracted to her, and he kind of gets a rush out of her not being interested in him, and of course she is interested, and they keep running into each other, and then they start dating, even though that means that she might have to lose her job. And also he kind of has this bad boy image, and the media are kind of really married to this idea of him being a very bad boy kind of guy who always dates different girls after each game. So he could also potentially lose his contract if it's ever found out. And I just didn't really like the characters. I'm so sorry. Okay, it's such a weird thing to start out with all the negative books. I feel like I'm just negative right now, but that's because it's the lowest rated ones. But yeah, I didn't really like them. I would absolutely file in a complaint for sexual harassment. The way he was talking to her in the beginning while she was working for him. I really disliked that. And I know it was like a part of his bad boy persona, but I just didn't like it. And he had like these names that he called her that were just like overdone. And I don't know, I didn't really enjoy them. So if you've read the series, and especially if you've read the later books, please let me know what you thought about those. Is it worth it to pick up the other books, or is it more of like the same kind of style? Because then I think I'll have to say no. Also, the book was like more than 500 pages long, and I feel like that's way too long for a romance book, especially a contemporary one. Like, there is no way we need 500 pages for a love story. I'm sorry. Then I have two books that are like between 3 and 3.5 stars for me. The first one is The Faking Game by Olivia Hayle. I read this one on my Kindle, and I think that it was also around like 500 pages. And again, it's just not my thing when it comes to romantic books. Like, it's too long, and it was kind of the same here. Kind of had a promising plot, but then I felt like the plot just kind of get lost. So our female main character moves to New York, where she wants to have a fashion career. She is from a very rich family, and she kind of wants to make it on her own. She's been working as a model, and she doesn't really want to do that anymore. So she's also being stalked, by the way. So she has to move to New York, and then while she's in New York, the stalker finds her, and her brother's best friend, he decides that he wants to help her so she can move into his mansion, and then he can kind of like protect her there. And she also has this dream of like starting to date, because she hasn't really been doing that beforehand. So they kind of strike a deal that they can practice dating together. And of course she has a crush on him, he has a crush on her, and it's dual POV, so we get like both sides. And then it's just about like him teaching her things. I really like the setting. I was in Rhode Island last year, and it really reminded me of some of those beautiful mansions you see near Newport. So I was kind of envisioning that when I was reading the book. But again, I felt like it was a little too drawn out. And I really liked the stalker plot of it, but it was resolved so quickly and with like no real satisfaction. So I kind of got completely lost in the plot, I'm afraid. I have a pet peeve in romance books if one of the characters calls the other character by like a nickname or pet name, and they like overuse it. Like, for instance, in this one, he keeps calling her Trouble, and I just don't like when, you know, like he will call her Trouble every second time he talks to her. Yeah, it just, there were certain parts that I didn't really vibe with, but I'm happy I read it, and I think it might be for some people. And then this next one, it really pains me to give this book 3.5 stars, and that's because I've never given this author this low a rating before, but that was And Now Back to You by B.K. Borison. So this is the second book in her First Time Caller series. But we're following two competing, I forgot the word for it, but she's a weather girl, he's a weather boy. I'll put the right word on the screen. But yeah, we follow these two characters as they have to cover the biggest storm in Baltimore yet. And they have to go to this place where the snowstorm is said to be hitting the hardest. And then of course it's a single bed trope. These two characters are very opposites attract. So Jackson is a very like strict type. He's like very type A. He likes to have everything under control. And Delilah is a bit more of like a happy-go-lucky kind of girl, like a sunshine personality. We were introduced to these two characters in the previous book, but unfortunately I just didn't really feel the love between them. It's just such a shame because like the cover is absolutely insane. It's so stunning. There was, again, this was also a case of a lot of pet names and overused pet names. And then I really dislike when a plot is moved forward by a character literally falling into another person, like stumbling into a person. And I think Delilah fell like 3 or 4 times, like directly into the path of Jackson, where it was just a little too unbelievable. And I just feel like it's kind of a cheap way of moving the plot forward. Also, in real life, if someone fell that often, I would be like, you need to get that checked out. That's not normal. Like, no one is that clumsy in real life, unless like it could be like an underlying issue. Like you could suffer from low iron, or I don't know. She was just like a little too chaotic, and I actually felt like once the romance started, I had to look in the book to see if I had accidentally skipped several chapters, because I felt like I had fallen asleep and then suddenly everything was just happening at once out of nowhere. So yeah, it really pains me to give this a low rating, but unfortunately it wasn't for me. Then I luckily have a few 4-star reads. The first one was The Long Game by Reid. So this is the 6th book in the Heated Rivalry series. So this is what season 2 of Heated Rivalry is probably going to be about. So it's the story about Shane and Ilya, like 10 years after the first book started. So it's kind of like their life together and how are they still playing hockey and keeping their relationship hidden. I'm not going to say too much because I feel like that would be a huge spoiler for people who want to watch the show too. But I just thought it was really cute, and it was definitely very focused on Ilya, which I didn't mind at all. I think he's a great character. I always love when he has small cameos in the other books. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Again, I'm not gonna spoil it, but it's about them. So if you know about the show, then I think you know what's gonna happen. Then I read No Matter What by Cara Bastone. I have loved all the other books that I've read by this author too. I especially love the one she released last year called Promise Me Sunshine. That one was like an instant 5-star read. And this one kind of had similar vibes, as in, like, I really enjoyed it from the get-go, but then it kind of dragged on a little bit. And for those of you who really dislike the miscommunication trope, do not pick this one up, because that is kind of the entire reason why there is a plot in this book. Like, the miscommunication was not good in this one, not good at all. I was actually considering giving it 3 stars as well. It's only because I really enjoyed it in the beginning, and I just really like the way she writes her books. We follow Vin and Ross, who are married, but they were in an accident, and ever since then their marriage hasn't been the same. So they're still living in the same apartment, but one day Ross discovers a note where she can see that Vin is planning on moving into another apartment, and he hasn't talked to her about it. And it's kind of about their way of finding back to each other. There's a focus on art in this one, because Ross starts to do drawing classes, and she connects with herself in a new way, and also with Vin, because he helps her when she has to find a model to draw. So again, I love the way she writes. Unfortunately, the miscommunication trope made this not a 5-star read for me. I feel like it could have been solved a lot easier. Like, it wasn't believable enough. But I just, yeah, in general, really enjoy her books, and I will definitely be picking up the later ones too. But this one was a maybe 3.5, maybe 4. The more I talk about it, the more I think it might be a 3.5. I also gave 4 stars to The Art Thief by Michael Finke. So this is about a real person who stole a lot of art all throughout Europe for like multiple years, and he ended up in jail multiple times too. Okay, so it's kind of written as a true crime book, because this was a really famous art thief. His name is Stefan Breitweiser, and he stole a lot of art for so many years with his girlfriend. And what was really unique about this thief was that he didn't sell the art. That wasn't a part of the plan. He just felt like other people couldn't really appreciate the art the same way that he could, so it would be better if he had the art in his home. And the weirdest thing is, he lived with his mom, so him and his girlfriend were like having their own room at his mom's house, and they just always locked the door, and then they just had all this stolen art inside. Okay, so I have some numbers here, otherwise I'm gonna forget it, but they stole more than 300 objects in 8 years. Like, that is insane. And he just had all of these things in his house, and he was kind of like addicted to stealing. Just the entire story is just insane, and no one could figure out who he was. Like, the police were after him for so long. And I'm not going to spoil like how they found him and what the mistakes they made were, but this was written really interestingly, because it was written about Breitweiser and his girlfriend, but also kind of like as if it was a novel, and we were kind of like following along as like a true crime. So you keep like reading about them, and you don't really know when are they gonna get busted, like when are the police gonna catch up to them. And it was just so interesting. Also the psychological aspect of it, like, why did he think it was okay for him to do this? Because he didn't really feel any remorse. Like, he actually thought he was doing the art kind of a favor, and he kind of felt like he had a special connection to art that other people just couldn't feel. Like, it's just the wildest thing, and like the wildest study in the human psychology. I did not expect to love this as much as I did, but I thought it was super interesting. And I also read it while I was getting a tattoo, and I just found it so suitable that I was getting art on my body while I was reading about this art thief. Then I have a 4.5-star read. I actually have 2. One of them is Role Model by Reid. That's the 5th book in the Heated Rivalry series. This book follows Troy and Harris, and Troy we know from one of the previous books. He's recently been bought by another team, and he's away from his like old best friend, turned out to be a really bad person, which we already knew from the other books. But he starts on this new team, and he gets really close to the team social media manager, Harris, who is this golden retriever kind of guy, and he's just openly gay and proud, And Troy really envies him for being so open about it because he kind of thinks that he might be gay as well. And it's just their story and how Troy opens up more and more and how he takes a stand against his former best friend. And Harris is just such a great guy and so open-minded. And yeah, I just think it's really cute. I actually think this might be my favorite book in this series. They were just both really sweet and good for each other, and you just get a lot of like warm feelings while reading the book. So I highly recommend this one. I thought it was super cute, and I can't wait to see who they're gonna cast as these characters. I think it's gonna be amazing. Yeah, I also gave Daddy Issues by Kate Goldbeck 4.5 stars. I read her audiobook You Again a couple of years ago, and I really like that one. I love the way she writes. And it was no different for this book. I'm really glad that I actually picked this one up because I saw the Goodreads reviews and they were not great, but I did not agree with the Goodreads reviews at all. So we follow Sam, who's a 26-year-old who is living with her mom because after COVID, she kind of had to move back and now she's just been stuck. And then they get a new neighbor, and this guy's name's Nick, and he has a little girl too. And she kind of becomes like close friends with him and also his daughter. And it's just about like their slow burn romance and how she finds the motivation to get unstuck too. Like, of course she has daddy issues. That's like kind of the main point. So her dad has left her and her mom, and he left her with a lot of cartoon books because that was kind of the thing they had together. So they would go to like yard sales and to different stores, and they would buy all these rare comics together. And now she just has them all, and like she doesn't sell them, she doesn't do anything about them because she's so sure that her dad is gonna return at one point, and like they're gonna have the shared hobby again, and she's kind of like just safeguarding them until he comes back. Sam definitely makes a lot of dumb decisions, but I think it makes sense for like who she is and where she is at in her life. I know some people thought it was really annoying to read about that, and they just thought she was really unlikable, but to be honest, I felt like she was like a really true and real and genuine person. And I love that Kate didn't really sugarcoat it or make her into this perfect character. She just felt flawed. She felt like an actual character, and I felt like her and Nick were so good for each other. And then finally, my 3 5-star reads. I think I'm going to start out with the books that I mentioned in every single video. And that is, of course, The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower. I have here volume 7 and volume 8 that I've just finished. Again, we follow Emma's journeys. I think these are in 1884, and we are still following Emma and her adventures in London with her friends. If I have to avoid just being a broken record, I just highly recommend this series. I think I might do like a video at one point about these books where like I will try and live like Emma M. Lyon for a day. I think that would be really fun. But I just love these books, and I especially love all the new characters that we're also being introduced to. Like, we keep learning more and more about the characters that surround Emma, and we get to know her more as well. And there's definitely higher stakes now than in the first books, which I really enjoy. Also, I really enjoy that we're getting a lot more of Hawkes, who is the vicar in St. Crispian, where she is living. I don't know if for anyone who's read these books, I am so curious, do you have like a favorite out of the 3 men? Because we have Piers, Islington, and Hawkes. And I'm definitely a Hawkes girly. So I will highlight everything he says in pink because that means I love it. And then I will add small hearts. Like, I know that she's probably not gonna end up with him. I don't think that's like part of the plan at all. But I'm just so excited about the rest of his story because I just like him a lot. And then finally, this was maybe like the most fun I've had reading a book this month. And that was Hot for Slayer by Alix Hazelwood. So this book is about Ethel, who's a vampire, and Laszlo, who's a vampire slayer. And Laszlo has been hunting Ethel for like 100 years because that's his job. He has to slay this vampire, and she has avoided him every single time. So we follow them throughout time, and it's really fun because we go through different time periods, like for instance the fall of the Berlin Wall. Like, they're there having their own little storyline, and in true Alix Hazelwood fashion, it's just really fun and quick-witted. I think Alix Hazelwood does an amazing job with her vampire books. Like, Bride was also a 5-star read for me. And fun fact is, I read that book on the same day just last year as I read Hot for Slayer this year. So that is just my yearly Alix Hazelwood vampire book day, I guess. It's only like 94 pages long, so you can read this in an evening. That's what I did, and it had me laughing out loud. It had me really intrigued from the beginning, and I just thought it was such a cute take on a vampire and a vampire slayer. Wish it was a full book I would have loved to read an entire series about these two characters. I hope she will be inspired to pick it up again, or at least do another kind of series that is a little similar to this, because I would read 100 more of these. It's just so much fun, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm so happy that I ended off this video talking about that book, because now I'm just feeling very giddy and happy. So yeah, those were the 12 books that I read in March. I'm really curious to hear what books you read and what was your favorite read. Maybe also let me know what books you're really excited to read next month. I have a few really exciting new releases for April that I can't wait to pick up. But that will be all for me. I hope to see you again in another video, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!